Hey guys, it's Vera Wild, back again with more general tips for beginning crossdressers. As always, keep in mind this is not a tutorial. I'm not an expert. These are just general guidelines that I know I would have liked to have had when I was starting out, and I'm hoping that they will help some of you out there. Now, the last few times we have talked mostly makeup, focusing on the face. This time we're going to shift focus a little bit, and we're going to talk about curves, specifically these ones. Breasts, boobs, bazongas, the twins, the girls, cantaloupes, melons, tatas, tits, tits. Oh, they're wonderful, aren't they? And they're also very, very important because breasts are automatically associated with femininity. The general rule of thumb in most people's minds is if it has breasts, it's a woman. Now, obviously, in reality, we know there are women who are flat chested and there are men who need a bra, but it's all about the perception. And the general perception is if it has this curve, then it's a woman. And it's also very important for another reason as well, which is that women's clothes are designed with breasts in mind. So if you have a completely flat chest and you don't pad in some way, the clothes aren't going to fit you correctly. The shirts, the dresses, any of it, it's not going to look quite right, and it's never going to fit your form properly because it wasn't designed for a completely flat chested form. So these kind of essential. So the way that most dressers probably start out, the way I know I started out, was to just get a bra and stuff it with whatever I had on hand. And in a pinch, particularly when you're still figuring things out, that can work. And obviously, it's an inexpensive solution. Now, doesn't really work in the long term because doing it that way, it just looks artificial. The curves aren't right. You might end up with lumps in some place. It doesn't work in terms of having it be a long-term solution. So that brings us to breast forms. Now, obviously, there are different kinds of breast forms. If you watch RuPaul's Drag Race at all, the ones that got a very large focus this last season were sort of the breast plates, which are a big overall thing, and they have cleavage, and they look amazing. They're also ridiculously expensive. I don't own a pair. They cost about $500 for a nice pair of those things, and I sure as hell don't have that money. I imagine most of you don't either. But if you are going to get breasts, you do need to be prepared to spend a bit of money. I've spent about $100, $120 for every pair of breasts that I've owned. I've owned two so far. Now, it is important to keep a few things in mind when you get a breast form. Now, I am going to show you my tits to sort of make the point a little bit. Now, this was one of the first pairs I had. I apologize for covering up the nipple so awkwardly, but I don't want this video to get booted off YouTube because of fake nipples. It sounds weird. It's happened before. Anyways, so this was my early one. You may notice it's a bit beat up. I didn't take exceptionally good care of my first pair, which is important to note. Take note of how to care for your breasts, and if you love your breasts, they will love you back. But there's something you'll notice about this. There is a curve inside on this. Now, as a result of that, this was a D-cup breast form. What it actually bumped me up to was about a C because of this curvature. So any sort of fatty deposits or pectoral muscles or whatever you may have, if this is the shape on the inside of it, that's going to fit in there. And so this will not quite bump it up to the full cup size that the breast form actually claims to be. Now, my current breast form has a flat back, and as a result is rather larger. Now, it is larger in and of itself anyway. So, and that brings up obviously the first thing, which is size. And you do want to keep a few things in mind when dealing with size. Obviously, most of us are going to gravitate towards larger breasts. We think, because with dressers, with anything that is sort of, we link to femininity, we tend to overdo that, trying to compensate for the fact that we aren't born as females. So we tend to gravitate towards overly large breasts, and you want to be careful of that. You want to get a breast that is going to match your overall figure. So in my case, I kind of pushed it a little, to be honest, with these. They are a little bit big for me, but I get away with it because I'm tall. I'm 6 feet before I even put heels on. So the height sort of balances it out, and I get an overall look that works and is not a caricature of what a woman should look like. But you should keep things in mind, like your height, like your overall build, and things like that when selecting the size of your breast form. Now, there are also different shapes, I go for a teardrop breast form because this here gives it a curve that starts up here and then arches out. You can get breast forms that are just sort of that without the top bit, and that can create a problem because that in place, if you lose that upper curve, it sort of just juts out a bit more. You can end up with a right angle that isn't a great look and certainly not a natural one. So that brings us to one other thing about breasts, which is you have to hold them in place. That's bras. Now, unfortunately, the reality of breast forms is that they don't stay in place with sexy bras. Sexy bras tend to be more revealing, have less material, and they're not going to hold this in place. So you are going to want, I'm going to get obscene here, you are going to want a more full cup. And you'll see this one is the one I still have in. See, it's there, and it is fairly completely covered up by this bra, and so it's all in place. It fills the bra out, and it gives me good coverage, holds it in place, keeps everything solid, and that is very important because obviously while you want the curves, you also want it to stay there. You don't want it every move you take to be jiggling up and so it's hitting you in the face. So that's pretty much it for breasts. They are important and they are an investment worth looking into if this is something that you've come to the conclusion is going to be a major part of your life, because without them, the clothes just don't fit properly. So that's it for tits. And until next time, I hope you all have a very, very lovely day.